Welcome to our show. I'm John Presley. We're painting the scenes of North Georgia, and today we're at Prater's Mill in Varnell. Prater's Mill was built in 1855. It's a historic landmark. It was involved in troop movements and locations during the Civil War. There was a battle fought nearby. The mill went into disrepair until about 1971, and the community formed a foundation to restore it to what you see today. The original millstones are inside, and also the turbine that turns them. And during the fall festival, they open the turbines, turn the mill, and actually grind grain the same way it did back in the mid-19th century. We're going to try to capture some of the magic of Prater's Mill today. Thanks for joining us. Okay, everybody, we're ready to start our painting of Prater's Mill. And what I'm doing right now is I'm wetting the background. The reason is I want to drop some colors in here. I'm going to let the paint fuse into the water, and it's going to create soft, blurry, fuzzy edges as I drop different colors in to suggest trees and foliage. But I'm going to put this on here and let it dry just a little bit. When the sheen's off of it, I kind of look at an angle. I'll be ready to drop some colors in. So our colors, I always like to start with this Verditer blue from Daniel Smith, because different areas, different places in the world, different places in the country have different atmospheric conditions, and this is just a great color in our area. So here we go. I think I'm going to just start dropping in. Look at that. I'm just going to let that do what it wants to do. That's watercolor. The color scheme of this painting is really going to be cool because it's going to be green and red, which are complementary colors, and the green will make the red look redder, and the red will make the green look greener. That's just kind of color theory 101. And I don't want to put just a whole big mass of one color of green. We're going to make several greens. Let's do just a regular straight green and drop that in a few places. Let's put a little bit of this is called New Gamboge. And it's just going to spread and fuse. And then let's put a cooler green. I'm going to use some ultramarine with my apatite, not as in Hungary, but as in APATITE, the mineral apatite. And so we're going to drop some of that in the lower areas to tell that we're going to have shade in here. Shady. This is the riverbank flowing right here. This is the Coahulla Creek. When they built this mill, of course, they built a dam across it right here, and it flows right here and over the dam, powers a turbine under here, and so that's how that worked. And so we're gonna run that in right there and darken it a little more even, because I'm gonna change the color here to indicate that waterfall. It's a different color of water. And this is all real dark. We'll probably have to go back in and put some darker tones in. But all right, so there we go. Now, I'm not worried so much about this roof line here because this is going to be a lot of greenery in it. I want to come over here. While this is drying and setting up a little bit, I'm going to come over here and start on this building on the left-hand side. There's like a spool, like a wire spool in there or something. But we're going to need to clean our palette. So this is a barn red. I'm going to put just a touch of green in it, and we're going to dry brush this in here. I'm using a different paper this week. This is Arches, but you can see that as I drag the brush across, it's leaving spots and creating a little texture. I'm not going to really keep all that, but I just wanted to show you that. That's really cool because it'll really work nicely with the foliage and that sort of thing. I'm covering up this window here because I'm going to go back and repaint it a darker color. And remember, we've talked about this in other episodes where you can go darker over light. You can't go light over dark in watercolor. That's most of that building there because there's not a lot of color change in it. There's a shadow under there, so I'm going to take a little bit of purple for the shadow tone. Go right under here. It needs to be a thicker paint than the brown that's on there, or else it'll create what's called a blossom or a bloom, and it'll be ugly. But that's going to be our shadow next to the building here is a little shrubbery. I'm gonna put the lights in first because these colors are so bright. You don't see pure bright green in nature very much. And if you do, you don't tone it down and you try to paint it the way you see it, you're gonna have a painting that's just like screaming green at you all the time. And that's one of the hard things about painting in the summer, spring and summer, is you get overwhelmed with green. Just like in the fall, you get overwhelmed with orange and red. So you have to break it up and you have to kind of play with nature a little bit to get what you want. And we're going to go back in with a darker. I'm going to put that in right there. I don't care if it fuses with the bottom of that building a little bit. Just kind of gives us a little bit of a mystery, sense of mystery there. While I'm over in this area working around, I'm just going to put in some of the green grass. Just kind of, now this I will just use this side of this brush to give us some texture. See that? And these trees are going to have the grass coming right up to them. There's a little bit of foliage here. I'll come up to the bottom of this building and I'm going to let that fuse. See that? This green grass comes all the way around the side of this tree. Kind of works its way out there. And we'll leave some space in there to maybe put some other color in. Maybe I put a little blue in it to makes it look like it's a little farther away. It makes it grayish almost. There, and a little lighter. And just throw that in. So that's a green grass in the background. And I'm not being real picky about covering every millimeter of the paper and letting that show through, because I can always go back and put more color in. So that's my thinking about it anyway. I'm gonna put that in there. This is a stone right here, a rock, and it's really neat. Really, I don't know if it looks like it's carved because it's got this even surface to it. And I'm just kind of let this just a little yellowish, kind of bring it forward a little bit. See that? That's closer. I want that closer, so this is farther back. We're going to take a break and let this dry so I can go back and rework into some edges without worrying about runs. And we'll be back in just a little bit if we don't get a monsoon on top of us. We will do more painting on the other side of the break, so stick around. Okay, we're back. And we're going to start now on the building itself. And it's a little bit stronger version of this barn red here. Also, the light is striking right here. This is in shadow and getting reflected light. I can always go back and tone it down if I want to, but I want to get this in. A strong statement. I'm going to try to leave it out for some whites, but I may have to go back in with some opaque white, which I've found that I usually do on these buildings. The white trim, it's just so hard to get it neat for this style of painting, which is just kind of architectural. You know, I'm kind of doing an ode to the architecture and an ode to the history, and I don't have to be totally accurate. You know, it's watercolor after all, but I want to at least have it where you can recognize it. That's what it is. And so sometimes I go in and touch things up with a little bit of, it's called Chinese white. It's an opaque white. It's still watercolor, but it's got a little something in it to make it opaque, and put some white lines in. If we have time, I might be able to show you what that looks like. Prater's Mill, as you can see, the sign says, was established in 1855. So it's a National Historic Landmark. A lot of stuff. One of the oldest communities, or the oldest community in North Georgia, is just a few miles down the road. This is just actually a little park here. They have the river here, Kohala Creek. You can come in and put a boat in. We saw some fishermen a few minutes ago walking up through there. So it's really cool. So there's that side of the building there. Got this part over here on this side. I'm painting around these trees because they're going to be a different temperature of color. They're going to be grayish, and I really don't want red in that. I don't want to try to paint over the red and have the red showing through. So I'm working my way around these tree trunks. And this part is in shadow. Let's pick this up with the same color. A little bit lighter version. Okay, so I'm pulling out this side of it's got a shed roof and it juts out, so I'm gonna hit it with this same color. And I've decided to just go over those white spots because I'm gonna come back in and do that with some white paint. I'm just kind of leaving it rough. Now that juts out. Now this side and this side over here are shadows. So I'm gonna take this color, this red color, and I can do it two ways. I could put it in and then glaze a darker color over it, or I can just go directly for the effect of the shadow in the first layer. And I like to do that if I can. Reason is, the fewer layers you put on, the cleaner it is, the more light goes through the pigment, hits the paper, bounces back to your eye, and it looks fresher, cleaner, brighter, and more alive. And I like that. See that? That's a subtle difference. It's more toward the purple, which makes it cooler, darker, and recessive. So we're going to come in, and these brushes, I'm not really trying to make broad swaths like I'm painting a house with with paint. I want there to be texture. I want there to be light bouncing in there. Don't know what the light is, but we're speaking the language of watercolor, which is light, and we want light sparkling in there. We want it, if this were a hot summer day, you'd have that effect of this, you'd have this effect of light just sparkling and bouncing everywhere. You're having to squint your eyes, and it also evokes texture. It also kind of gives us an idea that there's some age to it as well. A lot of this I'm going to come back in with some dark green foliage, so I'm not real worried about it. This has got a lot of trees and foliage, and so let's go back. And the roof is darker than the sky. I think I'll go ahead and do that. Just make it a little darker, and I'm just going to come right across these trees. Look at this. The trees are going to be a little darker, but I don't mind that they've got the blue in it. And I'm going right in under that because that'll help me break that foliage into it, okay? And just relax and not be so picky about the detail. There's some guys, like I've said before, that do that in watercolor, very detailed. My hat's off to them. It's really hard to do. All right, so a little bit of dark under here maybe. A little dark under here. This is in shadow. Let's put some shadow in there. How about, hey, look at that. Doesn't that look better? I think it does. See, it gives me shadow under the eaves and back under these trees. They're casting a lot of shadow. I'm going to use a little bit of the shadow on the shadow side of this rock. Now I want to try something here. I've got a little credit card thing. I'm going to scrape that down a little bit and try to get a little texture working. See that? Suggests a rough rock, but it's been smoothed through time. And then I'm going to come back in with some dry brush work because it has some mossy growth on it. I'll put some green and stuff in it. But at this point, we're going to let this dry, take a break, and we'll come back and get it close to finished. We will do more painting on the other side of the break, so stick around. Okay, welcome back. So we're going to start with these trees. And what I did during the break was I put in this greenish, grayish color, and that's going to be suggesting the moss that is all over these trees. Again, I'm leaving it a lot of dry brush where there's suggestion of light hitting the moss, light hitting the bark, and we're just going to work this out here. And I'm letting that kind of grow out into that grass. See that? Trees and grass kind of melt together. Now we're beginning to see more of it. Let's work on that rock up here. That's going to bring the colors together. This is the creek flowing over the fall, and I left a little line of light there to suggest maybe the sun catching that water as it cascades over on the back side. Now, what I want to do is I want to look at what I've got and play with it. I've got some dark here, so I'm just going to move into that. That kind of looks like a tree branch there, so I'm going to leave that to show. That's one of the fun things about watercolor is, you know, you kind of get your little Rorschach block, and then you play with it. I'll leave some light out here for some foliage right on the riverbank. We'll take this on up and out, leave that yellow. It's catching some sun, and we're just going to kind of blur and blend that out of our line of vision. I want to bring this out here, bring this up here. Lots of trees out here, lots of trees. I'm going to put layer after layer of trees here, but I don't want to get too specific. You know, this is the center of interest is here, but I don't want there to be just nothing back here. I want there to be something for the eye to see. I'm going to take a minute. I'm going to look and see. We're going to get into the darks, the darkest darks of the painting. There's a dark corner right here I want to get in. That's the corner of that bush. I want to see if that's repeated anywhere. We've lost this bush here, so I'm going to kind of suggest it back in and put some bright light in it. I worked on this window here, so I'm going to take, it's dry now, I believe. I'm going to take a little gray and put it in. That's going to suggest that. See that there's a wheel there or something. I don't have to tell you what it is. I don't have to draw it or let your eye looks at it and sees that there's something there. This is the underside of a porch coming out. I'm going to make that shadow there to bring the porch out. And there's some support beams. I'll put them in. And so there's that. And this is a bottom of the building. Let's run that on out here. Give the building a base to it. And now there's a lot of foliage right here. And that's probably the last thing we're going to get to do. It's all in here. Now this is where I'm going to take this brush and just make a mess out of it, so I can just work it in here like so. See that? Just in here like this. And it comes out all over the place. In fact, I can spatter. Look at that. Look at that. See that? Take those spatters and work with them. Let the light show through. That's got a little more blue in it. A little more blue. I'm going to let a lot of the sky show through. There's some over here. It goes all the way out here. It covers so much of this building. It leaves a mysterious look to it. It's very dark over here. What this is going to do now, we're about at a point where I've got to get little bitty brushes out, and I will do that. But that is where I'm going to stop. And if we do some more work on it, maybe we can show you the finished product. So hope you get to tune in to see it. We're going to take a break. We'll be back in just a little bit. We will do more painting on the other side of the break, so stick around. Okay, so we're back in the studio now, and I noticed that the painting was just real blah. There was not a lot of contrast, and it was because the skies had turned gray. I had taken a photo earlier in the morning of the sun hitting pretty strong and a nice blue sky, so I wanted to use that in the studio to go and make some adjustments and put some punch into the painting. And what I'm doing is I'm working from left to right, and I don't know if you can see, but I'm scrubbing out paint. I'm putting in a stronger tone, almost a pure orange, to get sunlight breaking in there. I'm deepening this dark, and basically what I'm doing just overall is I'm creating greater contrast of color and light and dark, not so much detail. I don't want to get lost in the detail. I want the whole thing to just kind of jump out at you when you stand a few feet away and look at it. That's what the painting's designed for. So I'm going back in here and I'm darkening things, changing the light angle, coming in. And I had pre-mixed some pools of colors so I could just reach in and grab it and put it down as quickly as I could out of a pre-mixed pool. That's nice to see. I can do that in the studio because I have other color pots just sitting there waiting for me to use. The studio, I've got studio lighting. It's not going to change. I'm sitting in a chair. I've got my photo reference down there below to look at, and I'm not a slave to it, but I'm getting the idea of what I want from it. Because, like I said, after we got there and started working, it really clouded up, started raining, and the painting was all gray. So now I'm pumping up the color. The trees, I wanted to pop out. I had them dark against the light, and they actually were light against the dark. So I went in there and put, that yellow is called Naples yellow, and it is a little bit opaque. It has a little bit of white in it. And so it's the lightest yellow I could get that might cover. That's the thing about painting outside. You just never know what you're going to have to face, and you just got to take it in stride. If you let yourself get all upset about it, you'll quit. But to me, it's a lot of fun, And I really appreciate all of you good folks for coming along for the ride. Where I'm painting now, that's the actual dam and the spillover. That's the original. And in fact, I learned that they actually put a dynamo in there and had not only working the mill, but actually provided electricity to run lighting inside the mill before anybody else in the area had electricity. They were very innovative. So what I'm doing now is I'm going around those trees to not only enhance the color of the mill, but also to let the trees pop out. We wanted the awning to stand out, so I went back in and put some dark shadows underneath it and around it, changed the color of that side because the sun was actually hitting more of the front, and it moved around to hit the side, so I had to change that all out. Fortunately, I was able to go a little darker. I was able to bleed out some of the color and go lighter, but you don't want to do that all over your painting or else it'll look like a mess. Okay, I've got a little ink pen. It's a watercolor, or it's some sort of permanent ink. And I labeled the sign Prater's Mill, established 1855, and I put my signature in the lower right and the date. And there it is, Prater's Mill. Thank you a lot for watching. Hope you'll come along with us in the future. Thanks for joining us today, and I hope you also enjoyed the look inside the studio where I did the finishing work to take it from the plein air or outdoor stage to a little more finished, a little more professionally looking painting that somebody will be able to enjoy hopefully for a long time. Thanks for joining us. Hope to see you again soon.